Hey everybody, welcome to another demo, and today it's Wolverine. So another piece of fan art, and as I mentioned before, I mostly prefer doing my own designs, but once in a while I will do fan art, and this is one of those times. And I'm a lot more conscious of being very kind of aware or sensitive about why is it I'm doing a drawing. And it seems obvious that, well, of course you draw what you would like. You know, you'd only draw what you'd like. But sometimes that can get, I guess, distracted by other things such as, oh, do I need to, go in a different direction for my portfolio, or do I want to promote my art a little bit more? And fan art is something that's more accessible. And there's nothing wrong with those things, and I've talked about that before. But for me, I'm being more aware of not letting any of those things become a higher priority than simply enjoying the art that I'm doing, especially at this stage in my life. And one of the other things I've been being more aware of or conscious of is being a little more deliberate and enjoying the thumbnail process. So even when sketching, and since these days I'm very much in a sketching state of mind, even when I'm painting, that with thumbnails as well, I'm trying to. It can be kind of it is an exploration type of thing and a trial and error, but I'm trying to enjoy even that process, especially if poses aren't going well, to still enjoy the fact or reason with myself that this is part of the process. And it can be enjoyable. So that's what you see me here. I worked in a few different poses of Wolverine, and now I'm kind of settling on one and working in that way. Again, one of those things, especially as artists, is we tend to kind of think about from time to time who we are as artists and the art that we do. I've always been a firm believer about being aware of working on the type of art genres and styles that you gravitate towards. And that's pretty obvious, I think, for most people. But what's become more on my mind, and this relates to why I've been sketching more, is also enjoying the type of medium or method and methodology that you enjoy. And because, as I talked in the previous demo, or a couple demos ago, I guess, how since I've been over the years doing different types of art and genres and styles and mediums, but all within digital and entertainment, that does keep it consistent to a degree, but it's diverse enough that I kind of forgot, I don't know if that's the right word, but drawing kind of took a backseat a little bit. And now I'm definitely being very aware and getting back to the specific technique, I guess, of drawing or methodology, because it's what I've always enjoyed the most. And so merging that with the type of style or subject matter that I enjoy the most, I'm slowly trying to bring those together so that they kind of balance out. And that's the same with fine art as well. And again, just, it sounds like maybe I'm overthinking these things, but again, it comes naturally, and it's just in my silent thoughts and over time, and it's been kind of leading towards this. So after I've constructed the general form of the body, again, build up the different stages like a roadmap so it helps you for the next stage of the drawing. Again, no one cares about how long it took you to get there. It's all about the results of it, enjoying the process. So I myself fall under that, do whatever it takes, and no matter how many attempts that you need to do. So a similar thing that happened with this Wolverine sketch that happened with the previous Hulk demo is I also did multiple takes, not only of the pose, but in particular the head and the face. And it's probably a crucial thing, since that is their main focal point whenever we're looking at a character. So that's what you saw there, me doing a few different takes on Wolverine's face. And it's somewhat subjective. The other one probably worked just as well, But in my mind, I'm trying to see what feels consistent with the rest of the style and the nature of the drawing. And so I felt this face, which was a little more exaggerated than the previous one, matches everything else a little better. So here I now I'm cleaning up the drawing, and I've mentioned about how we as artists sometimes go through this situation where our rough line drawing is much better than our cleanup drawing. And I've talked about how the key is to stay relaxed and always remember the objective is the subject that you're drawing and enjoying that fact that you're drawing that thing, in this case Wolverine, as opposed to subconsciously focusing too much on, I really need to make sure that this line's really clean. And I think that's what we do. That's what happens when you notice that your cleanup version is inferior to your sketch. So that's what I'm always trying to be more aware of, and I teach my students that as well. So even though the drawing and the design and everything is done and I'm just cleaning up, even as I'm cleaning up, my focus is I'm still drawing Wolverine and I'm enjoying this stage of drawing him. So that's the mentality anyway. So as we kind of work through here, since there's a little more emphasis on a fairly clean line, maybe this one's a little cleaner than what I did with the Hulk, but again, still keeping a sketch mentality. It balances out in the end because I end up being a lot messier, a little more messy with the colors in the painting as a result, because the lines are pretty clean and intact. Whereas the Hulk I did was pretty balanced, as a certain degree of roughness, both in the line drawing as well as in the painting. The other thing I've been doing these days is still keeping a bit of the underdrawing, where you can still faintly see the rough sketch. Again, that just gives a certain kind of energy and makes it a little more kinetic, and also it will help kind of balance out, especially when the sketch sometimes is stronger than the final line. The other thing I'm doing these days is going straight into color. For many years, I would go grayscale first, and many artists do that because it's easier to understand the values, and the coloring process becomes very fast and simple after that. But these days, since I'm keeping that kind of more loose and sketch quality to everything, that includes even the way I'm coloring. And these days, you've noticed I've also always started with like a primer or a base color. That's not necessarily fully opaque or the same level of transparency. And that kind of plays off a little bit in terms of how the colors I add fuse with that base primer, in this case, the red. Right, so even though I have blue over here, some of the red is coming through or turning that turning that blue a little warmer. As far as the costume design, I went with the more modern take on Wolverine in recent years in the comics, and I like that it still takes its nod and cues from the classic uniform while giving it a slightly more updated feel. And so that's what I decided to do. Sometimes I'll do my own version of it or just tweak certain things, but in this case it's pretty close to this modern version of Wolverine. Now the red and the orange played really nicely off when I added the amber. It gives it a nice kind of a tint or hue. And in the painting stage, it was pretty quick at this point. So what you see me here, what I did now in this case was I reduced the opacity over everything and worked on another layer to bring out some shadows. So I felt like everything was a little too dark, and that would make it difficult to kind of separate shadows and highlights. So the easy fix was just to go to that layer and reduce the opacity a little bit. And I'm just quickly doing a shadow pass. And it's one of those things, I think, as artists, that there's certain things and certain stages of work that we prefer. For me, it's always been about the drawing. And over the years, my feelings or interest about actually painting and coloring have grown. And, there was a point more earlier on where I didn't like doing that. I would just kind of do it very quickly or simply. In some ways, it's a style thing, too. So, of course, with cartoons and styles similar to certain cartoons, a cel-shaded and flat rendering matches, or it's suitable, but it's also really easy and quick to do. But as over the years I got practiced more in painting and getting faster at it, that's always been my mentality. I get bored So very rarely do I do very realistic polish. That's partly because that's not my preference in visuals, and also I get bored doing it. So the way to counteract that in my case was just to learn how to do that faster. But you notice it's still pretty rough and still pretty loose. So I'm pretty consistent with the characters that I do these days. It's usually falls between, on average, between an hour to 2 hours. This one I think was closer to 2 hours, in part because of I did spend a little more time on the drawing and a little more time on how I rendered it. Whereas I think the Hulk one took only an hour, and then additional time to add to do the gladiator version, and that seems hopefully obvious because it was a little rougher and simpler too, because there's not much to Hulk's design. You know, you just draw this big muscle-bound dude in ripped pants, whereas Wolverine, you know, you are adding some design elements in his costume and claws and things like that. So the next thing here I'm doing is trying to pull out some of the contrast and balance and the easiest thing to do is towards the bottom of the body is I reduce the saturation. So you notice that's why it looks a little more grayscale. And then I usually towards the top, especially towards the head, I pop out the face a bit more so it stands out. Now I'm doing really simple background, just for some mild effect. And I didn't go too crazy with it. Just an implied ground or dirt or dried dirt that's kind of cracked earth or something. And maybe a little bit of backlight or to just kind of help them pop out. More abstract than anything. It wasn't really meant to be the moon or anything like that. It's just something to help pop out the color. And then lastly, putting on an overall tint just to balance the color across everything. So that little bit of pink is in the blue, it's in the orange, it's in the yellow, to help harmonize it a little bit more. And there you have it. There's Wolverine, bub. So I hope you enjoyed it, as always. And until next time, take care.